You know that gnawing ache beneath the surface, the constant battle between desire and reason, between the impulse that screams for freedom and the whisper that nudges toward order. It is an ancient war within the mind, where chaos beckons like a siren, promising joy yet delivering ruin. You might think that discipline is the iron fist, the relentless punishment imposed to curb your spirit. But what if discipline is not the jailer, but the keysmith? What if it is not the enemy, but the friend who negotiates peace within? Can you imagine your mind no longer warring against itself, no longer exhausted by the tug of war, but finally resting in understanding? Comment 1. If you are caught in the ceaseless conflict of your own making, or comment 0 if you have found a moment of truce, yet know the battle rages just beneath. Subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss a word of wisdom that can turn your struggle into strength. The fool waits for time to bring discipline as if by magic, believing order descends like manna from heaven. But the wise man knows. Time is the lazy servant. Discipline must be the master's crafted tool. To discipline the mind is to lay down arms voluntarily, not at the command of an overlord's whip. It is the art of convincing yourself that the tireless skirmishes against your better nature are needless. The mind, once the battlefield, becomes the garden where reason plants the seeds of peace. Without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. It is in discipline that you cease to fight everything, because you have chosen your battles with thoughtful care. You grant your impulses no victory, yet you do not shackle your spirit with iron chains. Instead, you entwine that spirit in golden bonds of self-respect and clarity. Imagine a clock not tortured by hands that jerk it every hour but working smoothly, guided by gears aligned in perfect harmony. That is discipline. Not punishment, but the granting of liberty through understanding your own nature. Your mind no longer fights everything because it understands the futility. It acts purposefully, not impulsively. It masters rather than is mastered. You might have been taught to fear discipline, to dread the sting of control, yet here lies the irony. The absence of discipline is the greatest form of punishment. It condemns you to ceaseless conflict, endless regret, a mind tired and weary from incessant battling. Discipline frees you because it is not a chain but a compass. It points you true north in the stormy sea of your desires. In the quiet moments when you feel the pull of chaos, remember this: the mind that understands no longer fights. It does not conquer by force but by wisdom. It loses the false war and wins the true peace. And so, you stand at a threshold, not of punishment, but of possibility, where the discipline you sought as hardship reveals itself as freedom's most loyal servant. You find yourself caught in the looping trap of readiness, that elusive, shimmering specter called not yet. How often have you said, "I'm not ready," only to find the next moment, the next day, the next lunar cycle slipping past with the same complaint lingering like smoke in a forgotten room? This mind of yours, sophisticated in its cunning, whispers, "Wait for more motivation," as though passion were a flame to be summoned by convenience rather than the steady hand of duty. The trap is in believing that motivation precedes action, that inspiration paves the road before you set your feet upon it. But here's the paradox that history teaches with hammer and bell. Motivation follows motion, not the reverse. Like a river that swells only as it flows, your resolve is not a fire to be kindled from thin air, but the product of continual fuel, the work, the discipline you falsely await to start. You cloak yourself in the guise of right timing, as if fate holds a secret calendar where all your stars align before you dare to step forward. Yet the right time is often an illusion, a siren song sung by your anxious self to keep the peace in a mind that fears the discomfort of uncertainty. Franklin himself understood this. He knew that waiting for the opportune moment was the trap that allowed days and years to slip by, unnoticed, while excuses stacked up like books gathering dust upon neglected shelves. Repeated like a worn mantra, these thoughts harden into beliefs, and beliefs warren into prisons so secure that their bars become invisible. You no longer perceive "I'm not ready" or "I need motivation" as mere thoughts but as truth etched into the very fabric of your being. Each repetition deepens the grooves of inertia until to move feels like betrayal and to stop is safety. Picture a ship anchored in the harbor, surrounded by the endless thrill of exploration, yet tethered by chains forged from hesitation and disguised as prudence. The rebellious heart inside knows the treasures across the waters, but the mind convinces you the winds aren't favorable, the sails not ready to unfurl. This is the self-imposed embargo that discipline seeks to dissolve, not by harshness, but by transforming chains into ropes of resilience. This mental labyrinth is a core cause of paralysis. Inaction side by side with desire, the engine stalling because the gears refuse to engage. The irony bites sharp. The very effort you postpone on account of not being ready is the means by which readiness arrives. The mind that is waiting to feel perfect before taking the leap is like a farmer waiting for the perfect storm to plant his crops thinly veiled as wisdom, but doing the work of ruin. Furthermore, there lies the peril of perfectionism, a subtle beast that gnaws at your will. It convinces you that each step must be flawless, each decision a masterpiece of certainty. This belief delays the act of doing until it is strangled by the weight of its own impossibility. But remember, Franklin did not print on parchment without the smudges and misspells. His progress was iterative, forged in the imperfect fires of trial. You tell yourself that discipline requires heroic willpower, the kind reserved for saints or soldiers. Yet the logic of inversion reveals the truth. The tyrant you fear, the iron will, is the illusion. In fact, discipline as punishment, harsh, unyielding, and heavy, only breeds rebellion and despair. What transforms is gentler and fiercer. The quiet insistence that you need not fight every urge but only the ones that harm your vision. Each battle you imagine you must fight, you do not. Your mind likes to inflate problems like a balloon, creating storms from wisps. What if the discipline you resist is simply the choice not to wage war at every skirmish? What if it is the understanding that some impulses deserve kindness, while others demand firm redirection? The war you fight is the war you choose not to see. Beneath the surface of resistance lies a misunderstood longing for order, respect, and certainty, a truce your mind craves but cannot name. Until you embrace that discipline is not a punishment, but a peace treaty between your desires and your reason, you remain a prisoner of the self-imposed conflict. And so, as you stand before the reflection in the glass of your mind, consider this. The cost of maintaining the ceaseless battle is far greater than any pain you fear in discipline. The toll is a life half-lived, moments stolen by hesitation, potential paralyzed by doubt, and dreams deferred by the tyranny of imperfection. You must ask yourself, not with despair but with fierce clarity, how much longer will you consent to a war that offers no victory? If discipline is the hand that lifts the anchor, then stubbornness, the refusal to begin, is the weight holding your soul in harbors of safe misery. Reflect on this before the day's end. What price have you paid in silence, in stillness, in lost chance? The peace you seek lies not in waiting for a storm to pass, but in learning to steer the ship amid the waves. You sit at the precipice, staring down into the fog that cloaks the path ahead, and still you wait. But what if the fog is not an enemy to be feared, but a veil to be drawn back only by the swift blade of motion? Motion is the knife that cuts fog, the first decisive act that turns murmur into map. You do not move because you are certain, but you become certain because you move. Confidence is not the herald that calls forth courage. It is the loyal squire who arrives in the wake of your first step. The paradox is plain and merciless. You wait for clarity, but clarity comes after you act. This truth overturns the tyrant of hesitation and lights the candle in the cavern of doubt. Your feet are the architects of boldness, your arms the sculptors of resolve. Each motion, no matter how trembling or unsure, is a chisel strike against the marble block of inertia. No masterpiece has ever been carved without the dance of hammer and chisel. No ship ever set sail in calm without the labor of raising the sails. You must grasp that waiting for motivation is like waiting for the wind to fill a becalmed sail. The sea will not stir for your convenience. You must first hoist the canvas, stand firm at the helm, and dare to catch whatever breath of breeze arrives. Discipline is not a shackle, but the act of setting your sail even when the air seems still. It is the chosen stubbornness that stirs the stagnant waters of your will. Imagine discipline as the potter's hands molding clay, not with cruelty, but with patient, deliberate pressing and shaping. The clay does not resist the hand that knows the shape it must take. It flows under pressure toward form. Your mind, too, when guided by disciplined action, ceases to rebel because it recognizes the logic of its craft. To fight every urge is to wrestle with shadows. To choose which urges to follow and which to redirect is to master the artistry of self-command. You've been rehearsing the role of the stuck, the paralyzed, the martyr of stillness, for so long that you mistake the script for reality. But understand this: you are not truly trapped, you are merely rehearsing what you fear. Discipline is the stage director who calls action and invites you into performance. You do not wait for readiness. Readiness is learned on the boards, under the spotlight that exposes imperfections and demands your presence. The curtain lifts not on perfection, but on the brave willingness to begin. Remember, movement begets momentum. Momentum ignites certainty. The initial act carries you across the threshold, and then the next, until the fog dissolves in the rising sun of progress. The fool imagines motion requires a perfect plan, yet true motion writes the plan in real time, adapting, correcting, learning. Your hesitation feeds stagnation. Your action fuels evolution. Discipline is freedom, paradoxically so, for it grants you sovereignty over the chaos within. It is the steady flame that neither consumes nor flickers out, illuminating the path where dreams become priorities and priorities become deeds. To discipline your mind is to appoint a sentinel who guards your values and a gardener who weeds your distractions. Now, consider the great paradox. Your resistance to discipline is the resistance to freedom itself. You fear chains, yet wear invisible shackles of endless conflict. You dread control, yet suffer at the hands of your own wild impulses. The prison of contradiction dissolves only when you clasp discipline's hand, for it is not the iron hand of punishment, but the gentle hand of order, leading you home. Stand ready then. Not with trembling resolve, but with the calm certainty that arises from knowing your first step will create the second, that your motion will cut through fog, that discipline is not the enemy of joy, but the architect of lasting peace. You do not have to see the entire staircase. You only have to place your foot on the first step and trust the path will open beneath it. And so, the moment is upon you, not a moment of helpless waiting, but a moment of fierce readiness, a dawn breaking where once was darkness. You do not know the shape of what comes next, but you know this much. The war within has an end, the siren fades, and the mind that once fought everything now walks with steady purpose. The self is no longer a battlefield, but a sanctuary. You rise, uncertain, yes, but unyielding in the quiet power of motion's promise. The journey has begun. Will you take the step? You've spent years cultivating an unspoken army within, fear in its many cloaks, guilt that masks as duty, anxiety whispering perfection's gospel, reactivity disguised as your true nature. These silent enemies do not shout their names, they crawl beneath your skin, leeching your strength in the quietest moments. You believe you bear them, but in truth, they possess you. Guilt struts in wearing the robes of responsibility, convincing you to carry burdens not yours to bear. Fear tiptoes as caution's gentle guide, framing retreat as wisdom. The constant pursuit of approval parades as love, a relentless demand to please that shatters your own foundation. Anxiety masquerades as perfectionism's armor, each self-imposed standard a tightening noose. And emotional reactivity, that familiar tempest, the storm your ego calls character, but is instead the echo of old wounds screaming to be heard. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're just defending your pain. The friend who whispers, "You should feel guilty for this," or "better not risk it," is no ally. They wear masks to avoid their reckoning, to survive another day unnoticed. Imagine them as thieves who slip in the night, pilfering your calm and stealing your choice, laughing softly as your flame dims. One evening, anxiety came to visit, a spectral guest draped in shimmering doubt. It did not knock. It slipped in through the window left ajar by a restless thought. It rearranged the furniture of your mind, stacking every worry like bricks that formed walls you could not see. You searched for an exit, but the rooms multiplied, corridors twisting endlessly. Anxiety does not confront directly. It feigns company while building prisons. But here is the revelation you must face: that prison has no bars, but your own silence. Speak the name of this visitor. Expose it to the light. The shadow shrinks. Fear is a cunning tenant, more stubborn than a winter frost settling in cracks. It offers a chair by the hearth, whispering promises of safety, but chains your feet beneath the floorboards. Fear doesn't knock. It moves in and rearranges the furniture. You think you are choosing caution, but you are surrendering the vast fields of your life to a ghost's quiet dominion. Remember, the brave soul is not one untouched by fear, but one who rises despite the trembling. You have been seduced by guilt, the silent keeper of your so-called morality. It wears responsibility like armor, but in truth, it is a noose tying you to burdens you did not enlist for. When guilt calls, it wants allegiance to what is wrong, not right. It feeds on your hesitation, turning noble care into self-punishment. You labor under the illusion that suffering redeems your worth, but it only exhausts the wellspring of your spirit. The mirror now holds your gaze, and there you see the truth reflected back, an image not merely of your face, but of the invisible weights you carry. That pause is not weakness, it is witnessing. See your reflection in the theft of your peace, in the invisible thieves you shelter. This is the moment where the light floods in, where you no longer can excuse their presence, where you step into the role of a vigilant watchman and say, "No more." You have heard the old lie whispered again and again, that your emotional storms are your personality, that your reactions are proof of your authenticity. This lie keeps you small. Your outbursts, your snap judgments, your moments of despair. They are not who you truly are, but the raucous guests refusing to leave the party of your mind. To live under the command of these silent enemy emotions is to wear shackles forged in your own denial. Yet every chain is breakable once you see the links. Guilt, fear, anxiety, they survive in repetition, in silence, and self-justification. But they are not impervious. You find their pattern, name their trickery, and suddenly the illusion fades. You no longer live at their mercy. You call their bluff. There's a reversal for you. You think the weight you carry protects you from harm, but it only buries you deeper underground. When you cling to pain, you become the jailer, and your spirit the prisoner. Your supposed prophets, fear's cautions, guilt's calls, anxiety's judgments, are mere tyrants ruled by habit, not truth. Imagine now that your mind is a great house. The enemies have been slipping in through cracks in the walls, silently staging their long con. Fear, in the guise of caution, has turned the windows shuttered tight, cutting out the light. Guilt has filled the rooms with dusty relics of blame, immobilizing the furniture. Anxiety has scattered sharp shards on the floors, ready to wound the curious step. Emotional reactivity has set off alarms at every sound, rattling the household to unrest. The lights are finally on. The house is no longer a silent fortress for your enemies, but a stage for your liberation. As Benjamin Franklin might say, "Beware the thieves within who steal your calm, for they make you a beggar, even in your own kingdom." Or consider, the chains you accept as protection are but chains that bind your wings. And the first step to mastery is to greet the guest you fear and show them the door. You do not have to surrender to the cold whisperers any longer. You have the power to question their authority, to spot them when they put on their masks, to strip their disguises. No more can you allow fear to masquerade as prudence, guilt to parade as honor, or anxiety to wear the cloak of perfection. Each silent enemy you identify disarms another lock on your cage. They draw breath in the light and wither. Your mind slowly remembers its own vastness, its own strength unbound by the petty tyrannies it once lived to serve. You've been negotiating with what was only meant to be faced. Now it's time, not to run, not to wait, but to stop letting these shadows command your steps. You no longer need to win out loud. What once screamed, shattering your calm, has now dissolved into presence, a quiet tide washing over all that was restless within you. You stand not as a soldier in a battlefield, but as the serene keeper of a garden where each thought blooms freely, no longer forced into brittle order, yet never left to wild ruin. Where before there was clamor, now dwells an unspoken accord, a sanctuary built of silence and choice. In this new realm, your strength speaks not through boasts or shattered echoes, but in the gentle authority of being. The calm in your gaze holds more command than 1,000 shouted decrees. You do not seek to convince, to explain, or to justify, for your presence bears the quiet proof of mastery, woven through the very air you breathe. It is a power unassailed by the noise of the world, rooted instead in depths unseen and senses surrendered to the rhythm of inner certainty. If this silent path has spoken to your heart, then dare to make a quiet pact with it. Subscribe to this refuge where words no longer shout. They merely awaken what you have long known but allowed to dim. Activate the bell, that gentle reminder to return to yourself when the world distracts, when the clamor tempts you back into battle. And if this passage has been more than mere words, if it has been a mirror reflecting the stillness you seek, honor this meeting with a generous donation of $100. Not as a price, but as an invisible seal between kindred spirits walking the same silent road. You are no longer the sum of your reactions, but the guardian of your stillness. The invisible root beneath your feet, steady and unyielding, feeds the tree of your calm, its branches rising toward light without fanfare. Presence, your true name now, needs no proclamation, no explanation. It simply is, vast as the quiet sky and deep as the space between stars. The path you walk carries no false promise, but the weight of truth carried gently, as a secret entrusted from soul to soul. You no longer need to be understood. You need only to be whole. Those who win on the inside do not announce their conquest. They simply embody it in the silent, unwavering grace of their being. Here, at this threshold, the war within ceases to claim you. The siren song of chaos fades, replaced by a stillness that neither demands nor pleads, but simply welcomes. You have arrived not at an end, but at a state, a quiet dominion where discipline is no longer punishment, but the sovereign light guiding your steps home. Your journey will continue, silent and steadfast, the echo of a breath held long and released as pure, profound peace.